I'm Haley Taylor, and you're listening to the Rough Draft Diaries. Last week on the Rough Draft Diaries, Baldemar Velasquez nominated Pete Culp to be on the program. He described Culp like this.
Pete is a controversial figure in the Port Authority, but he's really got his heart in the right place.
So, a controversial character with a heart of gold. This description made me want to meet this Mr. Pete Culp. Okay, so to get started, you can just state your name first.
My mother named me Bernard Henderson Culp, but I go by Pete.
Interviewing Pete when I did was a case of perfect timing. February is Black History Month. I was hoping to meet someone who could talk to me about Black history in Toledo. Pete seemed a good fit, as he does know a lot about the city. He is a member of the Toledo-Lucas County Port Authority, a board that finances and operates port facilities, as well as business development in the Northwest Ohio region. He was also active in the civil rights movement in Toledo during the 60s. That movement was actually one of the reasons Pete stayed in Toledo. He moved here almost on a whim.
I'm from Sharon, Pennsylvania. From college, I got drafted by Cleveland Pipers, so I went to Cleveland and I got hurt. And my brother had become the pastor here in Toledo, Ohio. I came here and stayed with him for a while. That was in 1961.
While Pete was staying with his brother, he was also looking for a job. A man named Charles Penn noticed Pete and offered him a position as a community coordinator for what is now known as the Department of Neighborhoods, a program that provides quality and affordable housing for members in the Toledo community. Although the title of community coordinator was an entry-level position, Pete eventually took over Penn's job as director of the program after Penn retired. This position gave Pete the opportunity to meet with people in the community, learn what was working for them, and more importantly, what was not working for them.
For example, education. We had a situation in our city where the government had to come in and integrate our schools because they were segregated and schools were not equal. Also in the area of employment, a lot of African Americans were unemployed. We had the highest rate of unemployment statistic-wise. So we began to address education and trying to deal with economic development, both for employment as well as entrepreneurship.
All of these issues with housing, education, and employment were intensified when the Detroit riots broke out in 1967 and after Martin Luther King's death in 1968. When riots began in the city of Toledo around the same time, Pete was asked to assist in bringing communication and restoration to the community.
As soon as the riots took place with King, they also had killed a policeman. So it was real bad between police and the Black African American community. My role, I think, was to see if I could bring some reason to an insanity situation, and I think I did so. I met some interesting people during that time. For example, the Black 22. These were Black leaders in our community, mainly preachers, to talk about developing a plan of action that could make things a little better for people who had been less fortunate. Those are the kind of things that kept me here, and things have gotten better, trust me, but there's still such a long way to go.
Throughout the years, Pete worked, in his own words, tirelessly, trying to challenge the idea of what Toledo could be by joining new boards and also moving up through different positions in the city. This didn't always make him a friendly figure. In 1989, Pete Culp was fired for mismanagement under his position of Toledo's Commissioner of Renewal Operations. He challenged this action and ended up winning his case. Also fairly recently, Mr. Culp was involved in a heated exchange with a fellow member of the Port Authority. Pete's strong words led other members of the board to ask for a dismissal of Mr. Culp's position. The movement was declined. Pete talked openly about these events without embarrassment or regret, and I asked him if it bothered him that Baldemar, the man who nominated him for this interview, described him as an influential but controversial member of the Toledo community.
You cannot excuse anything that is wrong. I've learned a long time ago from my high school coach who, when he was about to pass away, called me to his bedside. And he told me that what had happened when I was in high school, when a guy had gotten beaten up real bad at the golf course. He said, well, I was there, and I didn't do nothing. And he said, do me one favor. don't ever walk away when you see something wrong. I've tried to honor that. My parents had taught me how to look people in the eye and stand my ground and not be intimidated by racism, but to embrace people and work to them. There's everybody. There's more good in everybody than there is bad. But there's always that issue that when you're working to bring about change, you're not very popular.
Whether popular or not, Pete doesn't seem to mind. He is already creating new ideas and new programs to better connect the city, never forgetting what worked for him in the past.
Everything that I embarked upon in the city of Toledo, I've tried to follow some of the examples that people had done before me. I feel fortunate that I could be myself and still be able to implement some of the things that they were trying to do here in the city of Toledo.
For now, I'm Haley Taylor, and thanks for listening to this episode of the Rough Draft Diaries. Pete's choices for the next episode of the Rough Draft Diaries include a lot of people. I normally ask for 3 options, but Pete gave me about 15.
I think you ought to look at Calvin Lauschie, Paul Toth at the Port Authority, Dean Monsky at RGP for Economic Development. I think you ought to talk to the mayor, Paula. She's a fantastic lady. ProMedica's director, and probably the new director at Mercy. And then I think...
There's so many, so you'll have to wait to see who's up next on the Rough Draft Diaries.
People like my brother, Bishop Culp, and Reverend Gordon. I would look at the leadership in our community